Welcome to the Taylor Made Tasty podcast. I'm Taylor, retired serial quitter turned goal boss coach, speaker, and consultant. I believe a beautiful life starts with a beautiful mindset. Join me as we amplify confidence, resilience, and actionable tools on the road to quit quitting on you and your vision. You are worthy of your goals, so let's go get there. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Taylor Made Tasty, the podcast. Today's episode features a guest by the name of Renee O'Neill, and we will be discussing how you can become more organized with just 1 hour a day. I am so excited for you to hear her talk about the concept of adding a power hour strategy into your life. And I know that you might be thinking, how can I find another hour in my day to even make a power hour? We will get into that. But what I love about this idea is that you are working with time in your day as opposed to against time, as so many people are in their normal day-to-days. A little about our guest. Renee is a wife, mom of two, and a life and business coach for moms, plus the host of the podcast, Embracing Life. Her journey, like many others, hasn't been easy. She has overcome struggles, including previous cancer diagnosis and difficult pregnancy, postpartum anxiety, all while juggling being a mom and starting and growing her own business. She has learned so much along the way and is inspired to help others. She has the tools, strategy, and knowledge combined with personal experience to help moms overcome their challenges in life and business. She is on a mission to help moms live their best life, gain the time freedom they crave, and have a life and business they truly love and are lit up by. Just so you know, even if you're not a mom, this episode is very impactful about becoming organized with a power hour. Please help me in welcoming Renee, and let's get into it. Hi, Renee. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm so happy to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I feel honored to be here.
Yes. Okay. So I feel like the last few years, being organized for me personally has been a little bit harder with just like everything that's going on. But being organized is arguably one of the most beneficial aspects of goal setting and goal crushing. And whether it's your email inbox that's organized, or your pantry is organized, or your goals with the tasks that need to be completed and all of that, I think organization is this sought after aspect of everyone's life. But to get there can feel very daunting. And even once you have it, it can be like easy to lose. So can you talk about why organization seems hard to maintain and easy to lose in our daily lives?
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, in particular, the last couple of years have been a lot for everyone. And I think sometimes organization can feel like a hard thing. And honestly, I feel sometimes we do just overcomplicate it, and we see it as this big mammoth thing that we need to achieve. And it's so daunting for us that it's like, oh no, too hard. I can't do it. You know, it just feels like a lot. And I feel like sometimes we just don't identify as organized. You know, we tell ourselves, I'm not organized, you know, I'm a chaotic person, I'm this, I'm that. And when you identify as being a certain way, that's sort of how you'll show up. And then you follow on from that. That's how your actions are, your behaviors are. And so I think sometimes it really is just like stripping it all back and let's just make it easy. Let's look at it as, how can we make it easier for ourselves? You know, what is something that we can do today that's just really small to get us towards that, you know, organization that we're wanting to work towards. So, you know, if it's in the home environment or like your office drawer, things like that, just start small, just one little thing at a time. And look at it just as one little thing at a time and accomplish that one thing and then move on to the next, and just take it that step by step. Because, you know, I really feel like we just look at these things as like, I want my entire home and every single cupboard and drawer organized and done. If we look at our goals, I want to achieve this one big thing by the end of the year, for example. And to me, it's more about, when you look at the goal side of things, it's more about, yes, that's the big goal that we are wanting to achieve and we're working towards. But let's break it down into what are the actionable steps you need to take towards reaching each of those milestones, towards that big goal that you might have. And I think sometimes it is just sitting down and looking at what it is that you're wanting to do. Okay, what are all the steps involved? Let's just look at the very first step only, and let's just put all the rest aside for now and concentrate on that. And I feel like when you do that, it just feels different. And when you're in that place of it feeling different and more manageable, all of a sudden it doesn't feel stressful, it doesn't feel hard, and you start taking the action. And then once you've started taking the action, it's just something that sort of flows on from there. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. Things are getting organized. I'm working towards my goals. And, it just feels so much better. And then all of a sudden, you'll probably start naturally identifying as someone who, you know what, I'm pretty organized. I've got things down pat, things are starting to work, and it just seems so much easier. And I'm a really big believer that we need to make things so much easier for ourselves. And organization doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't need to be this big, hard thing that we're trying to achieve.
Yes, I love that you touched on the mindset side of it, that we sort of identify as chaotic or unorganized. And that piece of it makes it feel less attainable because we're taking ownership of being chaotic, of being the person that my desk is everywhere or my inbox is everywhere, or sometimes people will share their screens. Zoom became a big thing the last few years, right? And they go to share their screen and their whole desktop is just filled with files and pictures and screenshots, and that sort of thing. But I think it's really, you touched on the mindset of it, of watching our words when it comes to starting to be more organized, that we don't continuously put ourselves in the box of chaotic or unorganized, or to the place where we can't do that. Yes. So, and that brings me to, when it comes to setting goals specifically, which could be goals surrounding budgeting or health or career. How would being organized help in hitting your goals?
Yeah. I think it really is the key. I think when we're wanting to, achieve a particular goal, I think without that plan in place and that organization in place, it really is just a dream that it's something you're wanting to do, but you're not actually sitting down to take that time to look at it as, how can I get towards this goal? And I think, having a plan and being organized really just helps us have that direction we need. It's almost like having the GPS. The goal is our destination, and
Mhm.
the plan that we have in place it helps us, allow us to have the next steps, knowing what we need to do and when to help us achieve that goal. And sometimes having a plan also helps us stay accountable as well, because, sometimes we can get really inspired and excited about a goal that we're wanting to achieve, and we start taking some action and steps, but then all of a sudden, we might lose some of that inspiration or excitement that we have, and then we start slowing down on the action as well. And so having a plan just really is that guideline to help us achieve a goal. And I think, for me, years ago, I probably wasn't somebody who was all that organized and didn't have much of a plan in place for things. And when I shifted into, putting some things in place so I could achieve my goals, it was amazing at how much easier it was, but also how I would actually accomplish my goals because I had these things in place. And I think it's important to know too that if you have a plan for a particular goal, it doesn't mean it has to go exactly the way that you've put it out to go. So, for instance, you might have a goal of starting a business, and You might have mapped it out as, here are all the action steps I need to take towards, having this business start. And you might find that you start taking these little steps towards, having this business. But you might find that on the road towards that goal, there might be little off roads, and you might take these other little like paths that lead you elsewhere. And that's okay too. I think when we're achieving goals, there's always these different paths we can take to achieve the same goal. And we always seem to get to that goal, but knowing that it's a plan and a guide just to help us along our way. And it doesn't have to be this strict thing that we have to follow. I think sometimes when we put the word have to or should with something, that's when it can feel a little bit more restrictive. And I think sometimes when it comes to being organized and, having plans, that restriction we feel sometimes makes it feel hard too. And again, it comes back to that, how can we make it a little bit easier? So I feel like being organized, in particular with goals, honestly is your game changer, and it just helps you accomplish things so much faster and just with that ease that you're wanting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on like making it easier, like feeling that ease, right? And that's the goal of being organized, or the feeling afterward is more ease, more peace, more productivity in our lives. Can you share some, I guess, proof that organization is a key piece of our daily lives, and like why it matters on the daily sense?
Yeah, well, I think, like you said, being organized really just allows us that freedom that we're wanting. It makes us just feel better. It makes us, it's one of those things where, in particular, like with your home environment or your office environment that you're in, our external world is often a reflection of our internal world. And so when we feel unorganized and chaotic, there's a very strong chance that your environment around you is going to be a replication of that. So your environment is going to be unorganized, it's going to be, perhaps, cluttered, that kind of thing. And so when you are organized and you plan and you do these productivity tools and put things into place for yourself, you just feel better. It just feels better for you, and it frees up your time and your energy and focus on the actual things that we love and enjoy, instead of having this mental clutter that we often have in our minds of, like, for argument's sake, we'll go back to the office drawer. You open your office drawer and it's all a state. You open it and you're like, oh my gosh, I really need to get back to that. And it's just things that we keep in our minds on the replay, that if we were just to take these small steps, put some things in place for ourselves, it might feel a little bit daunting in the beginning, being like, I'm changing all these things that I do. But long term, it's amazing at the difference it makes. And I just, it's one of those things that when you start becoming a little bit more organized, you will never look back, because you think, how did I possibly manage my life, my business, whatever it looks like for you, without these things in place? And again, I'm all about making it as easy as possible for people, and just having these little things that we can put in place to start making the big impact that we're wanting to. And I know for me personally, like, me being organized and having things in place has been the game changer. I wouldn't have my business should I not have had things in place. My home life with my family would not run, literally would not run without me being the organized person I am. So it's funny, just the flow on effect it has on, it's almost like your well-being, like you just feel better, and that mental clutter just, I'm sure it doesn't go away, because there's always going to be other things we've got going on in our life. But, we've got these lives that are so busy, and, we've always got things on our mind. Stripping it back so we've got less to think about makes life so much easier.
Mm-hmm. The idea of more time and brain space and energy and capacity for the things we love and the people we love is so attractive when it comes to organization. And in my coaching, I talk a lot about attainable steps and building towards your goals through smaller milestones on the way to the bigger vision, right? So, what actionable steps can you offer listeners on how to make organization simple and less overwhelming?
Yeah, I think, you know, planning your time really is crucial. And to be honest, there are different ways that we can do that. You know, we can plan our time by having a digital calendar, you can have a paper diary, but planning your time, honestly, is non negotiable to me. It is, a way in which you can keep yourself accountable daily for the things you need to achieve, the tasks you need to do, and just a place to put everything. Because if you're not planning your time, that's typically on your mind. That's that mental clutter I was talking about before that you've got going on. And so planning your time just helps actually allow you to have a bit more time freedom as well, because it takes out the indecision with things. If we there are certain things that we're wanting to do towards achieving a goal, for instance, you can look at those milestones that you have set out for your goal that you're wanting to achieve and actually plan them into your calendar as this is when I'm going to achieve this particular task or activity towards my first milestone of my goal. And so it just takes out that indecision that we might have. So I know for me that it's like, oh, yep, I want to achieve this thing. That's all good and well. But if we don't actually schedule in the time to do the thing, we might not do the thing. So that is one key part of it. And I'll be honest, there are different ways in which you can plan your time. And I really feel that it's dependent on the person. There are different, strategies you can put in place person to person. I personally do like to plan my time digitally because I just find it so much easier and cleaner. Whereas a paper planner, I don't like that you have to cross things out or white out something to change things around. But one thing that I actually do with my clients is talk them through doing like a weekly reset. So that is the day that you do a bit of a tidy up, I suppose you'd say. So it might be getting on the computer and emptying out the email inbox. It might be, you know, sorting out a drawer in your kitchen. It might be all these little tidy up tasks that you need to do for your week, making that phone call to book that appointment that you forgot about earlier in the week, or, just doing these little things. And within that weekly reset, it's also about sitting down and evaluating on your goals, looking at, okay, here are the goals that I'm wanting to achieve, check in with those. Are they still things that I'm wanting to achieve for myself? Has anything changed here that I'm wanting to pivot a little bit because I've perhaps taken a different path along the way, and I'm like, you know what, my goals actually shifted a bit here. So it's a way to check in with your goals and just realign with them as well, and make sure that they're still what you're wanting, and just get that excitement and back that you're wanting to achieve these goals. And it, it's just a way to tidy up from your week. And then what you can also do is then look at your week ahead, month ahead, whatever it might be, and just check out your calendar and maneuver things wherever you see fit to really just ensure that your time and your energy and focus is going where you want it to be. Because sometimes I think when we talk about like time management, for instance, it's also got a lot to do with like our energy as well, and like focusing on where all of our energy and focus is going, and check in and make sure it is where we want it to be. And then another thing that honestly, this was the biggest game changer for me. It's like my best productivity hack, and I'm sure some of the listeners have probably heard it before, and that's power hour. So it's an hour of time a day where you just schedule in that 1 hour, and you don't have to have it as a pre-planned time where you'll be doing certain tasks, but it's an hour a day where that is my catch-up time. So I know that every day from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. I've got my power hour. It's strategically that time because that's when my kids are in bed. I will say they're probably not asleep at that time, but at least they're in bed. And so I've got an hour of time that's uninterrupted. It's my time that I can get in and sort everything out from the day. So for me, it might be going back in the kitchen, tidying up all the kitchen from tea. It might be folding laundry. It might be attending to the emails that I didn't get a chance to attend to today that I wanted to. It might be, there's so many things it could be. It's just this 1 hour, you've got every single day that's dedicated to almost like catching up. And then what I find is I pop a timer on, and I'm like, right, I've got an hour, and I've got a Google Home in my living space. And so I pop a hour timer on, and I can see it counting down. And so once I've achieved all the things that I needed to in that time frame, I start looking at the clock, and I might still have 14 minutes left. And I will race around my house trying to do as much as I can in that hour. And it is crazy what you can actually achieve in 1 hour when you put your phone away, you try and keep it as distraction free as possible, and you just get in and get as much done as you can. And now it's like a challenge where I try and like, how much can I fit in my hour tonight? And I just go for it. And, sometimes it might be that I've actually achieved everything I needed to for the day. And so then I look at that hour and go, you know what? I'm going to take that hour and go and watch Netflix. So it's just this little thing that you've got that you can implement. And it could be for your business, it could be for the home, it could be a combination like it is for me. But Power Hour, oh, it's just the best thing ever. And, it's even just things like I will, prepare for the next day ahead in my power hours. So because I do mine of an evening, I will, pack lunches for the next day. I'll get outfits out for the next day, and just use that time as an opportunity to prepare for my next day as well. Just so I'm making each day that little bit easier, because as you probably can tell, I'm all about the ease.
Yeah, I love the power hour. I also like how you make it a game. So, like, count down, trying to beat the clock with all the things you have going on. So daily, I guess going into your power hour, how do you decide what it is that you're doing that day? Kind of like what's left of your task list, or maybe throughout the day you make a little list of like, oh, that's something I'm going to do in the power hour.
Yeah, so there are some things that are typical, like cleaning up the kitchen, doing lunches for the next day, that kind of thing. But when I'm going about my day, I will keep a little list. And for me, it's on my phone, but for you, it might be, pen and paper that you have. And the things that I haven't had time for, or, there's been something come up, because that's the thing, life throws us things. Not everything always goes to plan, and we need to have that a way to adapt. And so that's another way you can adapt. If something's come up and all of a sudden you've needed to go to the doctors, something like that, and you've had to, allow space for that, that's when you can then go, okay, that task I was going to do today that I now don't have time for, I'll pop that on my power hour list, and that's something that I can then come back to and achieve later on. And so it's such a helpful thing to have, to know that you've got this hour of space allocated for whatever you need to later on in the day. And then other times it could just be that you've noticed something in the day. Like, the other day I was in the kitchen, and I was like, obviously one of the kids had spilt something up all the cupboards that I hadn't noticed. So I was like, oh, that's a power hour thing. I'll come back to that later. So it's just, having that it's just really that opportunity of time that you can come back to things, or you can have, these things that you do on the regular in your power hour as well.
Very cool. Is there anything that's off limits to the power hour? Like, no, this isn't a power hour type task.
Not really. It just depends on what it is, I suppose. For me, I do a mixture of home things and business things in my power hour. But I guess it needs to be smaller tasks, because it is only an hour of time. It needs to be more smaller tasks. If it's something that's going to take more than that time frame, that would be better to be scheduled into your calendar. But it might be, if you were tackling, for instance, you wanted to reorganize your pantry, you might put that aside for your power hour and spend a few of your power hours dedicated towards working towards organizing that pantry. So it's just it's really just the allocation of that hour's time, and it just relieves the mental clutter too, of knowing you've got that hour of time later on as well, not feeling like, oh my gosh, I've got so much to do, and that energy you come with when you feel like you've got too much to do and you're overwhelmed. You've got the space in your life to fit some things in that you need to.
Absolutely. Your power hours in the evening, do you see, is there a possibility that a power hour could be in the morning, or is it better to be a recap to the day at the end?
I think it's really personal preference. It really needs to be customized and personalized to you and your needs. And so for some people, power hour is better suited in the morning times for them. So they can, set their day up for success because they've got their power hour in the morning. Other people, it might be in the middle of the day. You can set your power hour to be at any time of the day that is going to work best for you. And I think the one key thing is trying to make it a distraction free time, just so you can really, be productive within that hour and get everything done. Like I put my phone away in a drawer, literally, just so it's out of reach and don't have to, have that going on. And so it's looking at your calendar and your time and your day and going, okay, when would a power hour best suit me and my needs? And scheduling that in at a time that's best for you. And so some people, morning time really is best. It just depends.
Thank you for that actionable tool. Well, two of them. You had the weekly reflection, which I think is so powerful because when our weeks start to run us, they start to run us down and we get to the burnout point and then we just keep going with that week after week after week, then if we were taking time to reflect, we could maybe ward off some of that energy sucking activity or people or whatever it is, that if we were reflecting on it and going into our week with a plan, then it might feel different as opposed to, oh, we're starting another week and now it's, we're feeling in that chaos again. So that's very impactful. And then the power hour, I love that. So I have to think of when my power hour would be and what I would put in there. So I have to think too that also our lives are changing seasons constantly, right? And so many different ways there are so many different ways to be organized that being organized is really going to look different for everyone. Now, I think you might have changed the game with the power hour thing because that's really can be applicable to anybody. But like a new mom, would the organization for a new mom is going to look different than or maybe be thrown out the window altogether with the new baby, but also might look a little bit different than someone starting a new career that might feel like they have to be really organized in order to be successful, right? And so there are times in our lives where we have to give ourselves some grace when it comes to us maybe falling out of that organization. So when that happens, maybe we have a flow and we fall out of it. How do we bring or show ourselves grace in those situations and kind of bring it back?
Yeah, it can be really hard. I mean, there are different times in life where things occur and, we have maybe such limited time that organization does get thrown out the window and it does happen. I myself have been a new mum at one point and organization was something that definitely went out the window. You might have a change of career. It might be family members fallen ill. There's so many things that can occur that changes up how our life is because all of a sudden that time and energy focus has been shifted elsewhere, and that's okay. And knowing that it's normal for that to happen, and not being so hard on ourselves, be kind to yourself in those seasons where life is that little bit difficult. And, knowing that sometimes it's just a matter of survival, it's a matter of just doing what you can with what you've got, the time that you've got, and knowing that you're doing your best, and it's okay if sometimes that pantry cupboard is a mess. It's okay if sometimes your email inbox is full of emails that you haven't had the time to sort through, and knowing that it's normal and it's okay. And being kind to yourself in the process really is a key here because I think when you're in those moments, being hard on yourself and berating yourself because you're not as organized as you once was, or you're not as organized as you'd like to be, is not going to make it any better for yourself. And so being kind to yourself. And also just being able to reach out and ask for help. It might be your partner, it might be some family, it might be outsourcing something. If you've got a business, for instance, it might be getting, a VA in to help with the emails and the daily admin in your business. If it's at home, it might be asking the family to pitch in a little bit more because, you need it elsewhere, whatever that looks like. And so just taking things one step at a time and stripping it back to, how can I make this as easy as possible for myself? What are the things I have to do? And letting everything else just be what it is for now. And knowing that you'll come back to it. You'll be able to, you're equipped with those tools that you need. You can come back to things when you've got that time and that space in your life to start taking things back on again. So it might be just one step at a time, being, okay, I'm going to just tackle one thing here because I've got a little bit of time and space to do so. It might be, I'm going to tidy that office drawer that I've been meaning to tidy for the last 3 months that I just didn't have the space for. And so I think it really is just giving yourself that time and space that you need, because we all go through things in life that throw us, and it's okay if you need that little downtime, and you'll get there. You'll move past that season that you're in. And I know for me, back when I was a new mum, and particularly a first time mum, my place was a mess. Like, my calendar was a mess. Nothing was, very organized. And, no sooner I was through that little season of life, things got back on track again. And so just knowing that, you can always get back on track, just take it one step at a time, but be kind to yourself through that process.
Mm-hmm. That's applicable to many, many aspects of life. So that's a good broad thing to know, but it does apply to the organization piece too. So you mentioned keeping it simple and kind of coming back to like one thing. So if we take that concept but to just starting, if you were to recommend one simple action today towards daily organization and keeping it simple, what would that be? What is something that we could do today?
So one thing that I have found really, really helpful, and it's something my clients always walk away with and they're like, this was so amazing, is when you have a to-do list. We quite often, when we're feeling really chaotic and overwhelmed and unorganized, sometimes the first thing we go to is grabbing out pen and paper and writing out our to-do list, which can be a minefield in itself, because your to-do list might be 3 pages long. It might have tasks in it that are going to take you a month to do, and it can just be a lot to deal with. And so one thing that I like to do is, for a start, switching up the to-do list to actually be called an accomplishment list. So it actually all of a sudden has this mindset shift to it, where it feels different. Coming to a list and calling it a to-do list, all of a sudden that feels overwhelming because these are all the things I have to do. Whereas when you call it an accomplishment list, it's like, oh, these are the things I get to do. And so just simply changing the name in itself makes such a big difference. So yeah, accomplishment list is something that I like to do. And you can still make it 3 pages long if you want to. But another thing that I like to do that coincides with the accomplishment list is creating my top 3 priorities each and every day. So you might have an accomplishment list that is 3 pages long, but if you ask yourself, okay, today, if I can only achieve 3 things off this list, what are the 3 things that I'd want to achieve? And then I highlight them as my top 3 priorities. And it's interesting because when you do that, it feels different because all of a sudden you're only focusing on 3 things. And quite often you will achieve those 3 things, but you'll actually go on and achieve potentially 5 to 10 more things, just because you've taken that pressure off yourself and you've looked at that big daunting list, and one, you've called it an accomplishment list. So it all of a sudden feels different as it is. And then you've been able to prioritize it down to just those 3 tasks. And the feeling is so much different. And then you become more productive because then you've being able to prioritize your tasks down, which sometimes can feel hard to do for us. And then you've achieved those things, and then you're like, oh, it's only like the middle of the morning. I've still got time for more. And you go through that accomplishment list and be like, what else can I do? And you end your day feeling so much better. And so that's a daily thing that I definitely think is a good thing to walk away with and start implementing. And it's only something small, it's a small shift in a name and a way to just be a little bit more productive and make it easier.
Yes, I absolutely love that. I have called it a results list in the past, but accomplishment sounds so much better. So I definitely personally will be adopting that mindset shift, because I think it's so powerful, where it can feel so overwhelming, but really we're just talking about getting organized in our brain up here on paper so that we can actually accomplish it. So I have loved chatting with you, and I would love other people to know how to connect with you and for you to share about what you do.
Yeah, so as you've probably mentioned, I'm a life and business coach for mums in particular, and I'm all about helping women find that time freedom that they so desperately want. And I do that through my one-on-one coaching, and it is just absolutely my passion, because as the theme of this podcast has really been about making it easier, I'm all about making life easier. So, we can have that time dedicated to our loved ones and the things that we love and enjoy, instead of being, pinned down to all these things that are like taking up all of our time freedom that we're wanting. And so that's something I'm very passionate about. And I've got my own podcast, so you can come and check out my podcast as well. And my favorite place to hang out, which is probably yours as well, Taylor, is Instagram. So you can find me at renee.o'neill. I love Instagram. So if you're listening to this, definitely come over and jump in the DMs and say hi. I'd love to get to know you.
Yes, thank you so much, Renee, on helping us become more organized with just an hour a day with the Power Hour strategy. Definitely, like I said, I'm happy and excited to adopt some of your actionable tools. And we appreciate this as listeners when we're talking about things we can actually implement in our life, and not just theory and strategy, right? About how we can have the power in the execution of it all. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, y'all, it is time for the quote of the episode. The quote is from Orison Marden. A good system shortens the road to the goal. Find a system for your power hour and get to that goal. Take that into your week, your month, maybe even your year, and know that you are just an hour a day away from more organization in your life. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in my community. I'm so glad you showed up today, and let's go get there. Look at you, crushing it. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Tailor Made Tasty podcast. My hope is you always leave with a takeaway to implement in your own goal-crushing journey. I would love if you could take a moment to leave a review. And if you're looking for a community of goal boss badasses just like you, be sure to check out tailormadetasty.com/membership.